Mom threatened to boycott my wedding if I don't invite my sister, who exposed my secret of me dating a Muslim boy, and it's tearing my family apart. I'm 28 years old now, the oldest of four siblings, three sisters and one brother. My second sister, whom I'll call Pickle, is 2 years younger than me. Then there's Cupcake, who's 5 years younger, and our youngest brother, who's 11 years younger than me. Honestly, my relationship with Cupcake and my brother has always been great, full of love, trust, and support. But with Pickle, things have been complicated from the very beginning, and that tension has never really gone away. It all started when Pickle was born. I was just a toddler then, so I don't really remember much, but my parents have always told me stories about how jealous I was when she arrived. According to them, I acted out in ways to get her into trouble, and I was generally upset by the shift in attention. When I went to university and studied childhood psychology, I realized that what I felt wasn't unusual at all. Firstborn children often feel displaced or jealous when a new sibling comes along. It's a natural reaction to suddenly feeling like your place in the family has been taken away. That's not hate or ill will. It's just fear of losing your parents' love and attention. I often think about how my parents handled the situation. They basically showed up one day with a newborn and immediately focused all their attention on Pickle, without preparing me at all. They didn't involve me in caring for her or make an effort to get me excited about having a sister. There was no gentle transition, just an expectation that I would accept everything as it was. Looking back, I believe that's where things started to go wrong. If they had helped me bond with Pickle, the dynamic between us might have been very different. But instead, they kept bringing up stories of my jealousy for years afterward, as if that defined our entire relationship. And Pickle still holds on to those stories, insisting that I've hated her from day one and that I'm the reason for all our problems. It's incredibly frustrating because I was only 2 years old. How could I possibly remember or understand any of that? Growing up, Pickle and I just never got along. We fought all the time, verbally and physically, from as early as I can remember until well into our teenage years. Our parents never really stepped in to mediate or help us resolve our conflicts. Maybe they thought it was normal sibling rivalry and that we'd grow out of it, but the tension just kept building. Part of the problem was our completely different personalities. I was very neat and orderly. Pickle was messy and careless. We shared a room until I was about 10, which only made things worse. She'd break her toys, and sometimes mine too. I've always been very protective of my belongings, so seeing them destroyed hurt deeply, but because we shared space, I had no say in how things were handled. Our mom was the primary caregiver since my dad worked long hours as a truck driver and was away for stretches at a time. Because of this, I ended up taking on a lot of responsibility from a very young age. I became like a second parent, helping clean, looking after my younger siblings, and trying to keep the household running. Pickle wasn't great at chores, and instead of teaching her, my mom found it easier to rely on me to get things done. So I did it. I became the responsible one, the one who held everything together when no one else could. That role shaped me a lot. It taught me independence and responsibility early on, but it also created a lot of resentment and frustration, especially toward Pickle. I felt like I had to be perfect and do all the hard work while she got away with not pulling her weight. And because I was carrying so much, I didn't have the emotional energy to repair our relationship. We just stayed stuck in those old patterns, fighting, misunderstanding each other, and carrying old wounds that never healed. Even now, as adults, those feelings linger. We're still tangled in the past in a way that's exhausting and painful. I want us to move forward and build a healthier relationship, but it's hard when so much history keeps pulling us back. I'm trying to understand where she's coming from now, trying to let go of the blame and anger I've held onto for so long. I want to believe that we can heal, that it's never too late to rewrite our story. At the same time, I'm learning to accept that some scars take time to fade. Maybe we'll never have a perfect relationship, but I hope we can find some peace. For my own sake, and maybe someday for hers too. It's a complicated journey, full of frustration, hope, and sometimes heartbreak, but I'm still holding on to the belief that love, patience, and understanding can break down even the oldest walls. By the time middle school rolled around, things between Pickle and everyone else in our family had already started to spiral downward. She never really had friends. Not the kind that stuck around anyway. She was always caught in some kind of drama, constantly telling everyone that people were plotting against her or talking behind her back. The worst part was how she always somehow managed to twist the narrative so that I ended up being the villain, even when I wasn't involved at all. We went to the same school, yes, but our classrooms were on completely opposite sides of the building. I never spoke to her during school hours, never influenced her classes or social groups, but if anything went wrong, she'd look at me like I was the root cause of her problems. The tension between us was so bad that my parents finally decided to send her away for high school. She moved in with our grandparents, who lived about an hour from home in my mom's hometown. The idea was that a fresh start would help. Maybe distance would give her the chance to build a new life, make new friends, and escape the toxic atmosphere at home. But it didn't work. Even after spending 4 years in a new environment, she still graduated without a single close friend. That's how isolated she was. Meanwhile, when I was 15, everything changed for me too. My parents both got jobs in Germany and moved there for work, leaving me and my 2 younger siblings in the care of our other set of grandparents. It was a big adjustment. Suddenly, I was thrust into a role I wasn't prepared for. I had to take on so many responsibilities, helping with chores, making sure my siblings were okay, managing the household to some extent, all while I was trying to figure out who I was. I was struggling silently with an eating disorder that no one knew about. It was a heavy burden to carry, especially at that age. The pressure to act like everything was fine was suffocating. Adding to that was the cultural and religious environment we lived in. We're Catholic, but the community around us is mostly Muslim. That meant religious holidays were very important to my family, and they shaped much of how we lived. It also meant I had to be extremely careful about who I trusted and what I shared. That's why having a secret boyfriend, who was Muslim, was such a huge deal. It was dangerous for me, a girl, to be in a relationship like that. If anyone had found out, the consequences would have been terrible. Girls were sometimes beaten or worse, simply for being caught with boys from different religious backgrounds. I knew all of that. I knew the stakes were high. That's why I kept it hidden so well, and it's honestly a miracle that I managed to do so, considering the size of our town where everyone's business was public knowledge. Then there was that New Year's Eve when everything came to a head. My mom asked me to take Pickle out with me. She said it was because Pickle had no friends, and she didn't want her to be alone on New Year's. I was 17 then, and Pickle was 15. At our age, it wasn't unusual to go out and enjoy the night, so I didn't hesitate. I agreed to take her along, hoping that maybe we could finally have a real moment together as sisters. I thought maybe this could be a chance for us to bond. During the night, something happened that made me think maybe we could finally trust each other. Pickle found out about my boyfriend. Surprisingly, she didn't say anything. She just kept it to herself. For a moment, I felt like maybe she understood. Maybe this was a sign that we were moving past the constant fighting and jealousy, that we could have something closer to a sisterly relationship. But that hope was short-lived. I soon learned that Pickle's silence was just the calm before the storm. She held on to my secret for a while, but eventually, she used it against me in the worst way possible. The moment she decided to betray my trust, everything I had worked so hard to protect came crashing down. It was as if everything I believed about family and loyalty was a lie. I had trusted her, and she had turned around and stabbed me in the back. It hurt in a way I can hardly describe. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and completely exposed. It was devastating to realize that the one person who was supposed to have my back, who was supposed to be family, could do something so cruel. Our already strained relationship was shattered even further. From that point on, Pickle wasn't just my difficult sister. She was someone I had to be wary of, someone I couldn't trust. The fallout affected more than just us. Our family dynamics became even more complicated. The tension between us was thick and impossible to ignore at family gatherings. My parents tried to keep the peace, but the rift between me and Pickle was a constant shadow over every occasion. I was angry, resentful, and deeply hurt, but I also knew that holding on to that anger wasn't healthy, for either of us or the family as a whole. Looking back, I realized that our childhood was a perfect storm of neglect, misunderstanding, and emotional neglect. My parents, especially my mom, were overwhelmed with the challenges of raising 4 kids, a demanding husband working long hours, and their own cultural expectations. They didn't really know how to handle the jealousy and rivalry that developed between me and Pickle. Instead of helping us build a relationship, they often just pushed us further apart, unknowingly fueling the conflict. The fact that I was expected to take on so much responsibility from such a young age didn't help either. I was more like a third parent than a kid, and that kind of pressure leaves very little room for childhood innocence or sibling bonding. Meanwhile, Pickle was left to navigate her own struggles, feeling isolated and unloved, which probably explains a lot about her behavior and attitude. I sometimes wonder if things could have been different if my parents had approached things another way, if they had included me more in caring for Pickle when she was a baby, if they had helped us communicate better, or if they had just stopped bringing up my supposed jealousy as some kind of defining story between us. I was 2 years old when Pickle was born. I literally have no memories from that age. It's ridiculous to think that the entirety of our relationship could be boiled down to some jealousy from toddlerhood that neither of us can remember. By the time I was 20, I had already moved to another city for university, fully supported by my parents. Thankfully, university wasn't prohibitively expensive in our country, especially when you have family members earning abroad, sending money back. My plan was for Pickle to join me in that city, so we could be closer and maybe, just maybe, start to bridge the gap between us. But she didn't get her ID done in time, despite my constant reminders and urging. She just didn't take it seriously. I wasn't surprised. This was typical behavior for her. After enough delays and frustration, my dad got fed up and decided to move her to Germany instead, where he and Mom were working. It was a relief in some ways, but still a huge blow. Pickle eventually completed an apprenticeship there and landed a stable job, which is great, but we're still nowhere near a real relationship. Around 2017, my other siblings also moved away. Cupcake and my brother were out and about, living their own lives. Meanwhile, Pickle kept up her pattern of arguments and trying to prove some twisted point with everyone. She always seemed to pick fights that nobody wanted and brought drama where it didn't belong. Then came 2019. It was one of those fights that cut deeper than usual. My mom and aunt were discussing mixed marriages, always a sensitive topic in our family, and Pickle suddenly brought up how my parents allowed me to date a Muslim back when I was younger. My mom was completely blindsided by this. She froze. Then, as if from nowhere, she called me later that night and threatened me. I had to cut the conversation short because the fear and tension were unbearable. You can't understand how dangerous that was for me. In our culture and community, dating outside the religion isn't just frowned upon, it's a risk to your entire future. Girls who do that can be cut off from their families, disowned, or worse. I could have been homeless, isolated, or physically hurt. Pickle exposed me deliberately, using my secret like a weapon. Whatever her motive, feeling morally superior, seeking revenge, or just plain spite, it was the ultimate betrayal. That was the final straw. I texted her, telling her never to speak to me again. I meant every word. Since then, I've kept my promise. No contact. Zero communication. In 2020, I finished my master's degree and moved to Germany to live closer to my parents. The first year was difficult. I lived with the family, worked full-time, took care of cooking, cleaning, laundry, basically running the household. But no matter how close we were physically, I never spoke to Pickle. I never even looked at her when she tried to talk to me. I could see her frustration and anger build up over time. She never apologized or admitted she was wrong. Instead, one day she just exploded, accusing me of being a bad sister from day one. She said she expected me to talk to her again, just because we were sharing a roof. But for me, acknowledging her would have caused more pain than ignoring her did for her. By 2021, I moved out into my own place and thankfully haven't seen her much since. She moved out too, which helps avoid any awkward or painful run-ins during family visits. Now, about my mom. She's 51 and comes from a big family that functions like a wolf pack on the surface. They're always there for each other, or at least that's what they want everyone to believe. But my parents aren't emotionally stable. They both grew up during a war, which explains some of their struggles and parenting flaws, but it doesn't excuse everything. My mom especially is someone I have a complicated relationship with. She has a habit of stonewalling everyone when things don't go her way, and honestly, things never do. She's a perfectionist in the worst way and is never satisfied with anything. I resent her a lot, more than I do my dad, because she was always around growing up and she failed me in countless ways. She wants us all to love each other, to have the perfect family dynamic, but that's never going to happen. None of us can stand Pickle. Everyone has issues with her. Cupcake and my brother tolerate her, but only barely. As for Pickle, she verbally terrorizes my little brother every chance she gets. It's heartbreaking to watch. Pickle has become a miserable person, and it shows in the way she treats those around her. She's isolated, angry, and frankly despicable. I hate to say it, but she's toxic for this family. She drags down everyone with her bitterness. I don't expect our family to be perfect or even remotely normal, but I do wish there was more understanding and less pain. I wish my parents had done things differently, especially with us sisters. I wish they had helped us build a bridge instead of letting the divide between us grow into an unscalable wall. I wish Pickle had wanted a relationship instead of constantly tearing us apart. But here I am, holding on to the hope that maybe one day things will change, even if that day feels very far away right now. Now that I'm engaged, the wedding planning has brought everything to a head in ways I never expected. The first thing my mom said after I told her the news was that I had to invite Pickle. Honestly, I hadn't even thought about her. She's so far removed from my life that it didn't cross my mind. But for my mom, it's like Pickle is this permanent, unavoidable fixture in the family, no matter how toxic or distant she is. When I told my mom I wouldn't be inviting Pickle, her reaction was immediate and sharp. She said she wouldn't come either. This isn't the first time she's pulled a stunt like this. She skipped lunch at my place twice before because Pickle wasn't invited. At first, that hurt, felt like mom was choosing Pickle over me. But eventually, she started showing up for those lunches even when Pickle wasn't there, so I thought maybe she was coming around. I was wrong. Now, with the wedding, she's drawing a hard, immovable line. Mom keeps insisting she'll change my mind. She says, Pickle was just a kid when she exposed you, like that somehow excuses what happened. I've told her a million times that Pickle was 20 years old, an adult who knew exactly what the consequences would be for me. There was nothing innocent or accidental about it. I honestly think Pickle's motive was jealousy. At the time, I was in university, living independently, working toward a future, while she was stuck taking language classes and working part-time jobs, barely making ends meet. It's like she needed to drag me down to make herself feel better. Since cutting Pickle out of my life, I've found a kind of peace I didn't know I could have. No more emotional outbursts, no more walking on eggshells around her moods and manipulations. I refuse to invite that kind of drama back into my life, especially on a day that's supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. You have no idea how many times I've been pushed to the edge emotionally by her behavior. All I ever wanted was to be left alone. I don't trust that Pickle won't cause some kind of scene, even if she sat quietly in a corner. The anxiety and stress just aren't worth it. I want my wedding day to be about joy, about celebrating the love I've found, not about tension and conflict. This whole situation has even made me seriously consider cutting my mom off, too. She's the only one in the family who brings this up or pressures me to forgive and forget. The rest of my siblings don't say a word. They all understand why I keep Pickle at a distance. But mom keeps pushing, and if I disinvite her, I risk her dragging the rest of the family into the drama and giving them a hard time about coming. I feel trapped between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, I want to honor my own boundaries and protect my mental health. On the other, I want some semblance of peace with my family, especially on a day like this. But one thing I know for sure is that I will not invite Pickle just to keep the peace. No matter what mom says, no matter what guilt she tries to throw at me, I'm done sacrificing my well-being for someone who has done nothing but hurt me. I want to believe that maybe someday we can all heal, but right now, I have to look out for myself first. And for this wedding, that means Pickle stays off the guest list. My future husband, my friends, and my own peace of mind are what matter most. 2 days later, this whole thing was still eating at me. I couldn't get it off my mind, so finally, I decided to text my dad. I wanted to know straight up if he would come to the wedding even if my mom chose not to show up over the Pickle drama. It felt like I needed some clarity. A few minutes later, he called me. The moment he picked up, he started going on about how marriage is this sacred sacrament, how families have to come together, and how he hoped that by next year, I'd come to my senses and forgive Pickle. Hearing that made my chest tighten. It felt like every piece of advice and comment I had read on Reddit and heard from friends came rushing back into my head, reminding me of how complicated this all is. I cut him off firmly, not wanting to get dragged into another debate. I told him, please stop right there. I've said this a million times before, and I'll say it again. I will never forgive her. I don't think about Pickle, I don't miss her, and I certainly don't wonder how she's doing. Since I cut her out of my life, I've finally found peace. No more drama, no emotional chaos, just peace. And I'm not willing to give that up for anything. I could hear him beginning to say something about the sacrament and forgiveness again, but I didn't let him. And don't start with that sacrament talk, I said, trying to keep my voice steady but firm. Forgiveness is something between me and my priest during confession. It's not your place to comment on that. What I'm asking is simple. Will you be there for me on my wedding day? There will be seats reserved for both you and Mom, but if you choose not to come, that's okay. I went on. If people ask me where Pickle is, I won't shy away or give some vague excuse. I'll tell them the truth. No shame, no guilt. And if you don't come and people ask why, I'll be honest about that, too. I refuse to carry guilt for setting boundaries that keep me sane. For a moment, there was silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him thinking. Then he said quietly, "I just want what's best for you." "Me too," I said, "and right now what's best is protecting myself and the people I love from toxicity. I hope you understand that." I hung up feeling lighter than I had in days. It was still hard and the family drama wasn't over, but at least now I had told my dad where I stood. My wedding day is about new beginnings, and I'm determined to make it about peace, love, and joy, not old wounds and endless conflict. He just sat there on the other end of the line, completely frozen. I could almost picture him in my mind, silent, probably stunned by what I'd just said. The air must have been thick with tension because no words came out. I told him I had to finish drying my hair, and then hung up. It's been over an hour now, and I haven't heard a single word from him since. The silence feels heavier than any argument we've ever had. I was shaking while I said it, standing up to my father like that, laying my boundaries so clearly and firmly. But somehow I don't think he could tell. I didn't cry. I didn't even get teary-eyed, which surprised me because I thought I would. Instead, I felt this strange calm, a quiet strength building inside me, like a shield. It was incredibly hard to confront my dad like that, probably the first time I've ever truly done it in my life. I think that realization hit me afterward. Maybe it's why I'm still processing everything. I know my mom was probably there too, listening silently, but she didn't say a word during the call. Honestly, that might be for the best. Her silence was a relief because her opinion is the last thing I need right now. She's been pushing for Pickle's inclusion from the start, making my life miserable over this, and I'm not ready to have that fight again. The constant pressure from her feels suffocating. I'm not sure if she even understands how much damage it's caused. If they choose not to come to the wedding because of Pickle, it won't break me. I've spent years emotionally preparing for the possibility that my family might never fully support me or be there for the big moments. My best friend's big brother, who's been like a brother to me for years now, has already promised to walk me down the aisle. He's shown me more kindness, respect, and unconditional support than any of my own blood relatives ever have. Knowing I have someone like him by my side for one of the most important days of my life gives me a sense of peace I haven't felt in a long time. I won't be heartbroken if my family doesn't show up. What really hurts is having to deal with this whole situation in the first place, the drama, the betrayals, the endless pressure to forgive and forget when I know deep down I can't. I wish it wasn't even a topic. I wish my wedding day could be just about love and happiness, not about broken family ties and impossible expectations. I want to celebrate this milestone surrounded by people who truly care for me, not those who use it as a battleground for old grudges. We'll see what happens in a year when the wedding day finally arrives. But one thing is absolutely certain. Pickle is not invited. That is a firm boundary I will not budge on, no matter the cost. And, honestly, I'm still surprised my dad took my mom's side on this. I never thought he would. It's disappointing, painful even, but it's also part of accepting the reality of my family dynamic, that sometimes the people who should protect you the most are the ones who let you down. At the end of the day, I'm choosing peace over chaos, self-respect over forced forgiveness. I'm done carrying the weight of their expectations and their versions of what family should be. I want to live on my terms, to surround myself with people who lift me up rather than drag me down. And that feels like the strongest thing I've done in a long time. For once, I'm putting myself first, and it's both terrifying and liberating.